With a little bit of ink, white embossing powder, and the new True Love Stamp TV kit, you can create a background that looks like you're looking out the window on a cold, snowy day. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to do this card. First, you're going to need some Versamark ink, and you're going to need an anti-static pad. And the anti-static pad removes static on the surface of the card and also any oils that may be on the cardstock from your fingers. This way, you know the embossing powder will only stick to the Versamark ink and not to anything else. You're going to need some embossing powder, and I'm using the Stampendous white embossing powder, and this is the fine detail white. You're going to need a sponge dauber. I'm using one of the jumbo daubers and some Memento Bahama Blue ink. Now you can use any color ink for your background depending on what colors you want to make your card, but I'm using the blue because I want kind of a turquoise sky in the background. Then you're going to need a piece of cardstock, and I'm using the Gina Designs Pure Luxury 120-pound base weight white. You can use the layering weight white too. I just happened to grab a scrap, and this is our heavier weight. Then you're going to need some adhesive, and you're going to need some rubber stamps. And I am using the Snowflake from the True Love Stamp TV kit. And what you'll notice in this snowflake is the snowflake is created with a bunch of hearts, which makes it really nice throughout the whole winter, and to use it for Valentine's Day or any kind of holiday you want, or any kind of card that you want that you're just sending for love, not for Christmas or, a winter holiday. And then you're going to need the border stamp from the True Love Stamp TV kit, and this one has all hearts going across. This is such a useful stamp, and I'm going to show you a cute little way that I'll make a valance on top of my window using this particular stamp. To begin, I'm going to rub over the entire surface of that white piece of cardstock with this anti-static pad. And then using some Versamark ink, I'm going to randomly stamp the snowflake all over this piece of cardstock. And remember, when you're stamping, you want to make sure that you stamp off of the cardstock, not just everything inside the center, but you want to stagger your stamps and make them kind of go off the edges of the paper so it looks like patterned paper. Now, although you can't really see this Versamark ink right now, I can see it a little bit because it leaves a watermark behind. And if you can't see it, you can always turn it a little bit and you'll be able to see where you stamped last, because it just has a nice shiny look to it. And I want to make sure that I don't overlap my snowflakes here. And I'm just going to keep stamping that until my entire piece of cardstock is covered with this pattern. Now my next step is to sprinkle the white embossing powder all over the surface of this stamped piece of white cardstock. And I'm going to do that over a scratch piece of paper, and then you'll be able to see where your snowflakes are, because you can can you see that a little bit? You can see it's a little bit raised. But in real life, you'll be able to see it very, very well. And then I'm going to blow away the excess and then emboss it. Okay. And now the surface of the card is embossed, and you'll probably be able to see that shine in there a little bit. You might be able to see that. But now you're really going to be able to see it come up, because I'm going to take a sponge dauber and some of the Bahama Blue, and I'm going to load up that sponge dauber with ink. And then starting right in the middle of one of the snowflakes, I'm going to use a circular motion to add color to the surface of this card. Now I want to just touch it a little bit and make sure it's not hot. It's not hot, so that means that I won't mess up any of the embossing powder. So here we go. I'm going to start right in the center of one of the snowflakes and work in a circular motion. Can you see all that coming up now? You can see how pretty they look. And I'm going to turn that and add a little bit more. Again, starting right in the center. I like to start in the center because it makes the center of the snowflake a little bit darker than the rest of the ink as you spread it. I'm going to go back and add a little bit more ink in the center of some of these others. It just kind of brings out the snowflake a little bit more. This one. And this one here. There we go. And there's our finished background paper. Now, I'm going to cut this into 4 even pieces, but first I'm going to emboss one more little thing. I'm going to take a piece of black cardstock and rub the anti-static pad over the surface. And then I'm going to grab that background stamp. I'm going to ink that up with the Versamark. Then I'm going to stamp this right at the bottom of this piece of cardstock. Just like that. There we go. And I'm going to add some embossing powder to that. Grab another little scratch piece of paper here. And you can see that gives me a very pretty little heart border. Now I will emboss that heart border using my heat tool. And that white will get a lot brighter once the embossing powder melts. It really becomes vibrant. But I like the detail embossing powder because these designs are very delicate and they've got those little dots and things in them. And that would all kind of run together if you used a regular embossing powder. So you do want to use a detail one. Okay. Now, I'm going to measure this piece of cardstock, and it measures 4.5 inches. So what I want to do is I want to cut that in half. So I'm going to cut that at 2.25 inches. Like this. And then these pieces measure 3.5 inches, so I'm going to cut them at 1.75 inches. And that is going to give me my 4 glass panes of my window. And then I'm also going to cut the top of this off, this border. Actually, I think I'll do it the other way. I'll have more luck. I'm just going to eyeball it and make sure just the tops of the hearts are just a little bit below the blade. Like that. And that gives me a nice little decorative heart strip. Now it's time to assemble my window. And I'm going to grab these pieces of cardstock and strategically place them so that I've got a nice little black line going in between the 4 pieces, like this. And then I'm going to fasten those down. Now I'm not going to worry about this end here. I know this end isn't perfect, but this is going to be where my little valance is going to go on top of the window, so I'll show you that in just a second. But first, I'm going to tape these down. Now I have my 4 panes placed on my black piece of cardstock, and I'm going to add this cute little valance on top. But what I want to do is I want to make sure the valance, the hearts on the valance is centered. So I'm going to kind of judge the last heart and the first heart and kind of line them up so that they're about the same amount in from the side. And then I'm going to cut off that excess. So let me add a little bit of tape to that. And then let's place that right about there. So that should be pretty good. And now I'm going to trim off the excess, but I'm going to use my paper cutter to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press this panel all the way until it's flush with the blade. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to place my finger right here on the outside, and once I feel the cardstock butt up against it, I know it's even. And then I'm going to press down to secure it and trim. And that's just going to trim that little bit off. You see that? Now I'm going to flip that around and do the same thing. I'll just press that piece of cardstock until it hits my finger and trim. And now the valance is fairly well centered there. You can see the hearts kind of end up just about at the same spot. Another good rule of thumb is use one of the hearts as the middle of the pane, and then what you cut off of the edges is going to be fairly even like mine is. Okay. Now I'm going to attach this whole window panel onto a card base. And I'm going to use a white card base like this and just tape it right on there. And there we have the front of our card, like that. Now let me show you my finished card project. What I've done on this one is I've used the stamp from the True Love Stamp TV kit, When It's Cold Outside, You Warm My Heart, which is cute because the window is looking outside onto a snowy, cold day. And then I've stamped the heart stamp, the larger heart stamp. I stamped it once on one angle, and then I turned it and stamped it on another angle, making sure that they overlapped with each other on the side. And I added a little bit of Stardust pen in there to give it a little bit of sparkle, and pop that whole panel onto a black oval. These are the classic ovals by Spellbinders. It's both the large and the small set put together. And I've attached that focal image onto my card front using the 1/4 inch pop dots. Try using just a greeting stamp to allow more of the window to show through, or create a scene outside of your window with some of the scenery stamps in your collection.